Hello and welcome to another In a Nutshell video. This video will look at the topic 1F in the Christianity component of the Religious Studies A-Level from Eduqas. Topic 1F looks at two views of Jesus, the view of J D Crossan and the view of N.T. Wright. This topic helps students to understand different modern perspectives on the person of Jesus and how scholars have reached their conclusions about who Jesus was. In this video, we are going to focus on the methods Crossan used to research who Jesus was. Crossan is a former Catholic priest from Ireland. He has published extensively on the New Testament and the historical Jesus. One of his most significant books on this area is called The Historical Jesus, the Life of the Mediterranean Jewish Peasant. This phrase is used by Crossan to describe who he believes Jesus was. To reach this conclusion, Crossan used anthropology, a study of Jewish Roman history, and a study of New Testament and other early Christian sources. Through these three approaches, Crossan is confident to call Jesus a Mediterranean Jewish peasant. When identifying useful and reliable sources to research the historical Jesus, Crossan chooses to value texts that are dated to 30 to 60 CE. Additionally, he chooses to only rely on material that is found in more than one source. This is called multiple attestations. While the four canonical Gospels were written between 60 and 100 CE, Crossan argues that early layers can be detected and analysed. Crossan argues that some of the apocryphal Gospels are also valuable sources of information about Jesus. These are texts that were written anonymously under the names of the apostles and were declared to be heretical by the early church, which means that they went against official church teachings. For example, they were thought to contain Gnostic references. While many scholars date these apocryphal Gospels to the 2nd and 4th centuries, Crossan argues that two sources actually predate the canonical Gospels, and therefore they are valuable in understanding the historical Jesus. The first source used by Crossan is known as Q, which comes from the German word for source, which is Quell. Scholars have identified that there is common material between Matthew's Gospel and Luke's Gospel that is not found in Mark's Gospel. A number of scholars have suggested that Matthew and Luke shared a source which they used to write their own Gospels, and this explains the shared, and in some cases word for word, stories. Crossan believes that Q must have been an early source comprised of sayings of Jesus. He believes that Q never included birth stories or resurrection accounts, and Crossan argues that these tales about Jesus were added much later to the story of Jesus. The early dating of this source convinces Crossan that it provides reliable evidence for the authentic Jesus. However, the existence of Q is doubted by some scholars who question why such an important document has been lost and was never referred to by early church writers. Some scholars also question whether the differences between Matthew and Luke's Gospels suggest that a shared source document never actually existed. The second source used by Crossan is the Gospel of Thomas. This text is a collection of 114 sayings of Jesus, and Crossan believes that this format of sayings suggests that it is an early Christian text dated to before 60 CE, potentially written by a Christian who wanted to retain important sayings of Jesus. However, many scholars do date the Gospel of Thomas much later, to the 2nd or even 3rd centuries. The Gospel of Thomas was discovered in Egypt in the 20th century, and it begins naming the author as Thomas. Most scholars doubt that the Apostle Thomas wrote this text, and therefore the true author is unknown. There are also Gnostic references, which indicates that it may be a later source and considered to be heretical by the early church. In the 4th century, Bishop Eusebius included the Gospel of Thomas in a list of books that he describes as a fiction of heretics. The evidence today for this being a Gnostic text is that it was found alongside other Gnostic texts. It also begins with the description that these are the hidden words of Jesus, which is typical of Gnosticism. However, Crossan is skeptical of those who refer to the Gospel of Thomas as Gnostic, and he also states that several lines from the Gospel of Thomas also appear in the canonical Gospels. In the next video, we will consider what conclusions Crossan comes to about the historical Jesus, based on his sources and methods that we have just discussed. Thanks for watching, and make sure you press the subscribe button down below.